Welcome to the future of work, fixing what's broken. My name is Max Chapovsky. I help companies around the country find and negotiate the leases for their office space, ensuring that the space they have is the space they need and reflects and supports their company culture. Or as I like to say it, I help office tenants embrace the new normal. The Future of Work is a series exploring our evolving relationship with work, the how, where, and why, the trends in tech disrupting and improving the workplace, and perspectives from thought leaders on the new normal. Sooner or later, we all have an event in our lives that will make us realize that life is too short. Death of a loved one, severe illness, personal trauma. But the pandemic was a once-in-a-lifetime event that synchronized that realization for millions of people. It was the kind of global event that made us all realize that life is too short, all at the same time. So people started to evaluate everything from the color of the paint on their house, to their relationships with friends and family, to their relationship with work. So the demand skyrocketed from therapists to house painters. And when it came to work, people had more options than ever before. The gig economy, the passion economy, the sabbatical economy. It's not really a thing, but I think it will be. So people started to leave. Their bullshit thresholds became lower and companies started to recognize it and they started to adapt to it, to accommodate it. But then the pandemic started to wane and employers realized they overhired, so they started laying people off. And yet the unemployment rate remains near pre-pandemic lows, so there are lots of unknowns. Meanwhile, companies have realized that what really matters is authenticity. They want people to connect with each other and with their culture, but that means they need an authentic culture. They want the optimal employee experience for their workers, but that means they have to define what employee experience means to them. They want teams to have the tools they need and the philosophies they can believe in, but they have to implement those tools and establish those philosophies. And they need to define what an office means to them, a hub for collaboration, a place they have to go into, or just an optional resource. The approaches to hybrid versus an office are becoming more entrenched, from Lyft, all in the office, to Airbnb, remote first. It's kind of all over the place and companies are digging in. So it's this evolutionary mess as it relates to the future of work, a massive global experiment in its earliest stages. And so today's guests have wrestled with these very questions for many years for themselves and for their clients. Sally Thornton is the founder and CEO of Forche, an instigator on how to thrive in the future of work. Sally founded Forche in 2011 to connect the Bay Area's most innovative companies with exceptional talent. Sally is a frequent keynote speaker on the future of work, including the science of work-life blend and applying design thinking to make work better. She also loves to share her expertise on women in leadership, harnessing the value of a multi-generational workforce and talent recruitment and engagement strategies. When she's not full throttle at work, you'll find her playing tennis or digging into a pint of mint chocolate ice cream. I'm a cookies and cream guy myself, but much respect for going at it one pint at a time. Steve Cadigan has been at the forefront of global talent strategy and company culture for the past 30 years. While scaling LinkedIn from 400 to 4,000 people in 3.5 years, Steve led the development of LinkedIn's legendary company culture and was at the helm of the talent function for its period of its highest growth and through the IPO. Having worked in 5 different industries and 3 different countries, while also leading dozens of talent acquisition integrations all over the world, Steve has built unparalleled expertise for the talent arena. Steve's focus today is to help leaders and organizations build winning talent solutions to compete in an increasingly complex digital economy. Steve and Sally, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So there are obviously plenty of issues that need fixing around HR and the human capital side of the business. And the pandemic has both presented us with a need and an opportunity. So, Sally, talk a little bit about what you're working on right now and why this is an exciting time to be in the space. And then Steve, I want to hear from you as well.
Basically, I just try to make work better. So the way in which we do that is companies say, we need to redesign performance management where people actually want to engage in that conversation and feel like they're better for it. And it's time well spent. Or we need to reorg because we're either growing or, contracting, and we want to make sure the right people are in the right jobs. Or we need to hire a key executive. We tend to do chief people officer down to like director level. And we like to think about the social science, not just the skills. So we tend to think about the holistic way in which work gets done, and we meet people where they are, right? So those are the kinds of things we like to solve. Is like it can be a virtuous cycle, but we have to be intentional. So I feel like The difference of Forche is that we've been in the seat. So a lot of my team members have been in HR. So we're not just recruiters who like take a job spec and fill it, which today can feel a little bit like AI, right? It's like match, paste. We're more of the listeners who've been in the seat and can see around corners and like to help people with oxygen mask. Like, here's how to make your life better, how to make the employee's life better. And then we feel better. It's that oxygen can go all around.
Side note, listening is highly underrated. So I appreciate that you did that.
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, I would say the architecture work that most organizations are using was built for a slower pace, a more predictable, forecastable universe. And now the pandemic has really served to accelerate our recognition that this architecture isn't satisfying. Skills are changing faster than ever. People's perspective on work is changing faster than ever. The visibility and transparency to opportunity and to talent has never been greater. And all these things are colliding in just a deliciously chaotic way. So we all find ourselves facing so many new challenges all at once. I really like the way that you framed it at the outset, which is it is a big experiment, and companies are not in business to experiment. They're in business to have predictable, reliable, consistent outcomes. And experimentation brings the unknown in, and it's highly uncomfortable. And that's why I feel, like you said, executives are digging in. Like, we need to build consistency and continuity. I don't know that that's, the consistency I talk about is the new normal is never normal. So that's what you need to prepare for. And the best model for me is really the automobile industry, which has been around a century. And the company that is worth more than all the others is the newest one that just arrived. It's Tesla. It's run part-time by a CEO who's got 2 other jobs, apparently. And they're worth more than Ford, Honda, Toyota, and General Motors combined. And what the investors are recognizing is their capacity to innovate and create is greater because they're not entrenched in all these old architecture models of work. And that's powerful. And that's really, really unsettling for a lot of business leaders today.
Can I build on that? Because what I love about Steve is he is so comfortable with the uncomfortable. And yet that is not the normal, what's normally asked of HR or people leaders. That, the consistency is what's asked for. But what's interesting is my last corporate job was in marketing. And that's where experimentation is needed, like demanded. And so because I had a staunch in marketing as well as a staunch in HR, that's why I use design thinking applied to HR, because we love experiments in marketing and product. There's no company out there who wants to do normal stuff with their product or service. They want innovation. They want new ideas, and they want to feel uncomfortable. That's creativity. Why do we take those beautiful tenets that talk about the customer experience and we don't apply them to what he's saying on the architecture of the employee experience? Like, I think they should be mirror images of each other.
Totally. It's so interesting how you talk about, HR being averse to discomfort. I mean, if we think about, take our friend Elon Musk that we were talking about. So SpaceX, all right. I was watching that launch live, right, of the Heavy, and you see it going up, and then it starts. And then the trajectory starts to change, and you could see the broadcasters live. They're like, okay, this is interesting. This is really interesting. This doesn't seem to be what should be happening. And they're just
this is not going to plan.
Yeah. And then the thing just like tumbles end over end and just explodes in this spectacular fashion. And they were like, and I give them credit for this because they 100% had a ton of media training. They were like, that was a wonderful, wonderful learning opportunity. We just gathered so much data. And like most companies, we were just talking about this in a prior episode, like they don't have hundreds of millions to burn on collecting data. But the fact of the matter is the rate of change that we're experiencing around work is necessitating rapid experimentation. And by definition, that means that some experiments aren't going to be successful. And so we have to be able to accept that discomfort. So let's talk a little bit about an obvious question, which I still think bears discussing. So, Steve, what to you does it mean to be a human-centric company?
I think, well, it could mean different things to different people. From my experience, human-centric company recognizes the necessity for customized employee experiences. It recognizes that how we create value comes through the human, and that's probably the thing we should talk about, strategize, think about, and operationalize more than anything else. And most of my career, and sadly, I've sort of followed this path most of my life, has been working for organizations to say, oh yeah, people are number one, but the last thing on the agenda is the talent topics. Okay, let's talk about the new markets, new products, new engineering, new acquisitions on the frontier. And then let's talk about succession planning. Oh, sorry, Steve, we ran out of time. Let's put it on next month's agenda. But it's really important. People are number one here. Or my favorite, hey, people are number one here. You're going to start off on a 90-day probation period because, we're not sure that we trust our recruiting processes. So we're going to put you on probation, but people are definitely number one here. And I could just go on and on. And we've as you say, our default for most people practices is command and control and policy creation, all out of the spirit of fairness, creating a fair frontier. So that all came from a good place, but I feel we lost the plot a little bit as as economies and companies grew to the point where we failed to recognize that people create the value. That's where we should invest most of our energy and time. Most boards of directors do not have someone with a deep people creative, human-centered orientation. And this is one of the things that really weighs on me right now. I've worked in the last year and a half with about 17 states' healthcare associations, okay? And they're all saying, oh, Steve, this is so important to us. This is really, really critical. Thank you so much for your ideas and your thoughts and your provocations. Okay, have a nice day. And I'm like, not one of you has called me and said, would you come and sit with our board? Would you consider being on our board? Not one. And so I still feel very frustrated that recognition of human-centered, putting it at the first thing that you talk about, not a marketing plan that people are number one, but really institutionalize that, which means in Q4, if you're in a sales organization and you're behind in your numbers, your sales leaders are dealing with the people issues. They're not closing deals. That's human-centered. And then they're elevating other people to help solve those things. So it really is a time I think we need to think more about how meaningful that is. And I've seen it work. I mean, at LinkedIn, and I had a leadership team that got it. And we did some incredible stuff when we put that human-centered focus on the business.
Now, do you think that some of these massive layoffs and the decrease in, let's just call it talent supply, is going to swing the pendulum a little bit more in the employees' favor and force companies to sort of take a different stance on this and reprioritize it?
I think that'll be an enabler for sure. And it happened well before all these layoffs. I think it's the fact that people are not just quitting faster than ever before. We've got more people, more white men in America who have quit and without another job than any time in history. And I think they're taking stock and thinking differently around what they want to do, where they want to go. And that just is just one marker in the beacon of this ocean of talent that we're dealing with, which is super interesting.
Yeah, that is. Now, while this talent is still at the organization, they work in teams. And so, Sally, I want to talk a little bit about teamwork, which I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about. So, it's obviously critical to the success of any organization. But, the last few years, I feel, have exacerbated some existing issues. So the lack of tools that we talked about, inadequate communication. And so the concept of teamwork, the concept itself has to adapt to this, to thrive in the post-COVID world. So what do you think? And it's a big question, but I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about it. What do you think is the future of teams, and how do we get there?
Yeah, it's being more intentional about the system. So Steve called it architecture. I love that. So if we think about human systems and teams, we know that the output of teams is greater than an individual. And so as we think about small teams, like, is it what Jeff Bezos said, where it's like a team that can share a pizza, where you can build that, psychological safety, and you can really know each other and be able to, but still have diversity in the room, right? Diversity of thought, diversity of background, experience, all of it, right? As many layers as you can do, but it's being intentional. So I think, unfortunately, what our normative mode in hiring is fast. Right? I want to hire someone fast. I have too much work on my team's plate, hire. And then we kind of lose that intentionality. So I think this is an opportunity anytime there's churn, which is like now, to be able to be really intentional and say, okay, with this team, what do we need? So for my team, for example, we're mostly female. For me, a diverse hire is male, right? So diversity, when I say that, isn't about getting someone who has like 4 different characteristics that's an underrepresented group. It's really about saying, for this team, what is needed? Let's be intentional about how we round out that team. And then let's think about how the team has the system that will support their best ideas and their thriving as a whole person, right? So that means well-being, creativity, learning, right? All of that in this diverse, inclusive team. And really paying attention to the science. So when we talk about experiments, there are many experiments that have been run that have told us a lot. So we don't have to start from scratch, right? Build on this basis of science that says, these are the things that we know will help a team thrive, like psychological safety. We know that, right? Google did a huge study trying to figure out why some teams were better than other teams. And it was based on science that was already there from Amy Edmondson. And even though these terms can feel like a little academic, like a psychological safety, really what it means is, going back to NASA, that people can say what they think is the truth or their opinion. Like, this is the data that I see. This is my interpretation of it. What do you think? And they're not attacked for who they are as a person, right? They're not attacked personally. The idea can be discussed and debated, that they are safe as a human. That's what we need. That's the fanciness of psychological safety, but it's not that fancy. It's just about, how do we have creative conversations that then, when we end the day, we feel like we did something successful. We came up with new ideas. We contributed. We were heard. We had a wonderful day. We can all do that, but it does require a systems approach and intentionality.
If I could, Max, I'm a huge sports fan. One of the most interesting examples we have playing out right now is, let's just take college basketball this past season. Over the last 3 years, due to the pandemic, the NCAA changed some rules, and they said you can transfer to a school and not have to sit out a year, and we're going to give you an extra year of eligibility. So instead of 4 years, you can play 5. Once they put in you can change schools / consider that the parallel for work, change jobs without a penalty, we saw in this last year more players on the top tier of the Division I change schools than at any time in history. And coaches went from just recruiting out of high school to recruiting of every school in the world. So they're just pulling their hair out, trying to figure out, like, how do we prioritize? What do we look for? And also, for the first time in history, when we look at the ranking of all the teams during the course of the season, we saw more fluctuation in who was top and bottom than any time in history. We had all this movement happen. So when I think about the future of teams, I think about, we're going to have to build to expect people coming and going. And how do we onboard quickly? How do we, how do we adjust our chemistry to account for new players coming and existing players leaving at a pace we've never seen before? And so one of the schools, Duke, and Coach K retired last year, but one of the things he started doing was, as soon as he gets a player, he puts them in the WhatsApp chat group with the team before they're even on campus. So we're onboarding you before you even start. And here's another one, we're caring about you. Even after you leave the team, you're still part of the team. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that people miss. You're in or you're out. We've had this binary view of work. And it's such a lost opportunity, I think, that we need to start, like, the team is all of us. No, it's the people who are going to be joining and the people who left. Let's use that knowledge. Let's keep them a part of this. And that's the missing piece when people bemoan, oh, these people are leaving. I go, why? They're still part of the extended team. Like, keep in touch with them. That's a valuable opportunity that so many people are missing.
Totally. It's like the alumni network.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
we call it the fluidity and the future of work, because that fluidity, to Steve's point, it can be how you onboard them and how you alum them, right?
Yeah.
But it can also be how contractors come in and out,
Yeah.
right? Because no team is perfectly sized. And so how do you bring in, expertise for a period of time? And that's the future of work right now, right? The free agent nation. And so that designing for fluidity is essential. And it takes away this old idea of like that forming, storming, norming, performing. It's like, that's a very, it's a very static world that no longer exists. Like we should, blow that up and talk about fluidity.
I mean, it's crazy. There are companies that assume that people are going to work there their entire careers without recognizing the data that both of you are familiar with, which is that people don't stay at a job for more than, a handful of years, depending on the generation. Right. And so I was, talking to somebody from a company the other day that I was looking at their website, and they literally have a career progression timeline for a typical employee. And there is an end at that timeline, on that timeline, where that person moves on to the next job. And they're like, and that's okay, because we played a role in your career. You played a role in our organization. You brought something to the company that maybe will stay here after you leave. You contributed to the culture, and we gave you something in return, which is experience, which is learning and growth. And to me, it seems crazy that companies aren't recognizing the fact that, hey, you know what? It's okay to have an alumni network versus saying, oh, you're leaving. Well, then you're dead to us.
Right. Well, and then the other thing I will say for anyone whose like shoulders are tense right now listening to us is it's always for me a yes and, right? Like I have key employees who've been with me over a decade, and I have people come in and out. So in case, Steve said it, like it's not a binary choice. So when we talk about fluidity, there may be some who are like core. Like, hey, these are people where I've designed for them to be on my leadership team. And obviously, it's free agent nation, but I'm investing in them and I have a different expectation. That's okay too. So I always think improv answers, Tina Fey, it's a yes and, right?
Yes and 100%. So let's talk a little bit about the onboarding, the talent acquisition aspect of this, Sally. So what changes do you think COVID drove in the area of talent acquisition? What's kind of broken now, and how do we fix that? I know it's a long answer.
How much time do we have? Yeah.
I know. Well, honestly, it's the speed. So the biggest challenge with COVID was the hiring was fast. And it was like, I'm sorry, do you have a pulse? Right? How quickly can you start? And so I think that's why we're also seeing some of the, the layoffs, although that I think there's also just a lot of bullshit there of performative layoffs, but it was just too fast. I mean, I would say that's my meta. Steve, do you want to dive deeper on the beyond fast? I mean, lack of inclusivity, would be the other one, is not really getting the culture right, because when you onboard someone in a pandemic, what is that? What's going on culture wise? I feel like people, and understandably, like this is like, I get it. Like I come at it like not judgy. It's more just like, given the circumstances, it was hard, right? You're trying to get people quickly. You can't see them in person. It's just a shit show, right? So it's with like compassion that I say big mistakes were made with understandable reason. Okay, Steve.
Yeah, that last mile was always in person, and we lost the last mile. Right. And that's another great opportunity for us to, maybe, we experiment with some people, my clients experiment with like, hey, we think we're eliminating some bias that we were possibly experiencing with in person. But the part that I feel was exposed, and I don't think it's been recognized enough, is that we have been hiring for experience. And as a recruiter for over 30 years, I can tell you, when you get a job description from that hiring manager, it's got a shelf life of being accurate of about a couple of weeks. But that's what we're hiring for. We're hiring for that. But we know the job, the company, the market, the team dynamic are going to change. So why are we hiring for that instead of, okay, these core principles, but these learning, velocity measurements, like can the person grow? Can they learn? Have they learned new stuff before? Are they adaptable? Are those soft skills what we want? But no, it's like the belief is the more experience they have, the less training and the faster the time to impact. So I want that. But that is tiny compared to what it used to be. And that's the scary part again for all these businesses. Can't find the people we need as fast as we want. And when we do, they don't stick around. And I'm telling people it's not going to change. It's only going to get worse. So, you have to invest in your capacity to grow talent and spot people who can learn quickly. That's the big pivot. We are not going to recruit our way out of this problem. We are not. We're going to have to re-engineer work to address a more fluid reality. And that's, again, it's going to take some investment of time. And people are talking more about the professionals' decisions and not the inability for organizations to change the architecture of how they think about creating value. And as Sally said, the biggest one that I see people continue to make is they're only talking about employees. And they have this huge army of contractors and temps and independent consultants that I promise you, I don't have the data, but I promise you it's bigger than it was 3 years ago for every organization. Because in an uncertain world, you don't want to carry the burden of a full-time hire or the PR hit if you have to shrink the staff. So I'm going to keep that, what I call accordion, a buffer of talent that I can expand or contract without the PR hit and without a severance charge and all that. But that's a universe that's sort of seen like second class, and I feel like it's increasingly need to be recognized, as Sally said, as part of your team now. Are you developing it? Are you nurturing it? That is the largest pool after referrals of hires in most organizations, temp to perm, or temp to full-time. And
we,
yeah.
No, we did have that. So Forche does both interim and executive search. And we had more conversions during COVID because they couldn't hire people fast enough. So they take an interim person from us. Like Steve knows the data, even though he hasn't seen the data. So they would take an interim person from us and then convert them. And it was great, right? It's such a win-win because both sides get to test out back to experimentation. Like, is this a good match? Because how much do we really glean in interviews? I mean, we're all fallible humans, right? The interview process can be a little sideways. So the try before you buy is a brilliant strategy for all sides. Again, so it's a full side win.
And I also tell people on the candidate side, the imperfect job can often lead to the perfect job. And, I don't want to be a temp. I'm like, yeah, but you get in the door and you do your thing, they'll figure it out. You will find a home, and it won't necessarily be the thing you're doing. And I've seen that happen again and again and again. I told this story on TikTok, and it blew up because other people have experienced too. And I'll share it here. I've had several times in my career, one of my top people go out on a leave for whatever reason. We get a temp and I'm like, oh no, Sally's on leave. We're going to just get screwed. Okay, we'll try to find the best we can. Temp comes in and slaughters it better than the person who was on leave. And we're like, whoa. We thought, and that person was creating, in some cases, sort of a dependency on themselves to be the cog that everyone needs. And when someone new comes in and does it totally different, you're just like, whoa. And this is when why are we holding on to people so long? Like so many times, I've also had people we thought were stars leave, and then their teams are celebrating, ding dong, the witch is dead. We hated that guy. They were horrible. And we're like, what? They were always in our top quartile of, talent. And, we're humans. We get it wrong. And some people are great at managing up and great at making their boss think that they're the star. And then you take them out and you see a completely new picture. So why are we bemoaning fluidity? There's so many things that we can learn and benefit from.
So let's talk about some of that fluidity as it relates to what some are calling the great resignation or the great reshuffle. So there's obviously been massive layoffs in tech. And what's interesting to me, though, is that unemployment has gotten back to and has kind of stayed for close to a year at pre-pandemic levels. So Steve, you and I talked about this previously. Where is everybody, and are we using the wrong metrics?
We're definitely using the wrong metrics. What is organizational vitality? What is organizational health? We really need to think about that. Part of me believes that we should stop measuring employee engagement and start measuring how many people came back after they left as a key measure. But listen, the best explanation, and I've been racking my brains, and Sally and I, probably, virtually had beers discussing this too. Is like, where are the people that used to wash the dishes, park the cars, work in retail stores, which are, having to change hours, close on certain days, where are these people? And what was interesting about the tech layoffs is they were not met with a hiring freeze to the magnitude we've seen before. Like when the dot-com bubble burst, it was close everything, stop the travel, we're not hiring, and we're letting people go. Now, still people are hiring, and that's I think, a recognition that skills are changing. But the only thing that I've come across that helps me process this, like where is everybody, is that the pandemic halted immigration like dramatically. In the United States, every year going into the pandemic, we immigrated knowledge workers to the tune of 1.2 to 1.8 million a year. And that's stopped. Around the world, it stopped for 2 or 3 years. And so that is going to create a different dynamic where maybe the jobs that those folks were filling were filled by other people, and the void is showing up in these weird places that we've not seen before. And I don't know that flywheel of migration is, around the world is back to where it was, but we are seeing crazy stuff happen right now. Like Australia a few months ago declared a talent state of emergency. They said we are short 600,000 knowledge workers, and if we don't get them, our economy is doomed. So we got to, start marketing talent all over the world and get them back here. And isn't it interesting that they were one of the countries that had the severest restrictions around re-entry during the pandemic? Yeah. You're going to have to be in this nasty Motel 6 for 3 to 6 months. And people are like, no, I think I'll chill here in Costa Rica. They got good Wi-Fi and great pork and beans. And they fall in love with someone in Costa Rica and they never come home, And that played out like in really interesting demographic ways that we don't even know. Like the stories are going to be told. Like, I'm curious about the birth rate and all these other things. And tough times, birth rates generally go up. So it's going to be interesting. But that immigration thing, Max, is one of the only, pieces of data that can sort of help me reconcile. Like, where did those people go? Oh, it wasn't people leaving; it's people that weren't coming in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting correlation with the Australia example. Mm-hmm. So, Steve, I want to talk about LinkedIn for a little bit. So you built this culture at LinkedIn while growing headcount by 10x over a very short period of time, relatively speaking. But actually, I think the bigger success was a controlled evolution of the culture while maintaining the company philosophy against the backdrop of an influx of people that outnumbered everyone else 9-1, right? Like that's crazy to be able to maintain a culture, allowing it to evolve while keeping the right sort of North Star. That's really hard. So culture has always been key to organizational success. Obviously, we all know that, but it's the hardest to quantify. It's the hardest to even define sometimes, right? So what are the biggest challenges facing companies around culture, and what can they do?
The biggest challenge is that they are using words like pillar and foundational and immovable terms rather than organic terms. Like, there's a bunch of humans here that are in constant motion of change, and you're trying to build something that won't. The beauty of the LinkedIn experiment for me and the experience for me, and it wasn't me, I was, you've talked to Mike Gamson. He was a huge part of the culture that we built there at LinkedIn, because most of our growth was his organization, was sales, is that we pivoted, and this scared the hell out of me as a classic Western trained HR, professional. We pivoted from here's the pillars from the mountaintop of what the forefathers of LinkedIn said is our culture. We pivoted from that to please come here and make our culture great. We think it's pretty good, but we want you to make it better. And that invitation was really a magnetic draw for a lot of people. And it opened the spectrum of who felt they belonged, because they could come in and make it their own. And what I thought was going to happen was we're going to have all these fringe, weird things happening if we're going to make it open. But it all came down to a similar thing. I want to do stuff that matters. I want to solve problems that are real. I want to work with people I can learn from, and I want to have a life. And, that when I would ask people who would ask me, Steve, what's the culture? And I'd put it back on them and said, well, what kind of culture do you want? What's important to you? Okay. That was so powerful. And they would almost always say the same things. I'm like, okay, yes, that's what we want to. Come here and make it better. And that's where I think people have got it wrong. It's some immovable thing. The other thing they've got wrong is if they're not sold on culture being important, they're talking like it is. And I tell leaders all the time, if you're not sold that culture really matters, please don't tell your people it does, because you're just creating a trap for yourself. Here's the poster, but you're going to do half the stuff when you want to and half the stuff you're not going to do. And it's going to be worse than if you said, you don't really care about it. So But I think that's how I look at it. It's much more of an organic play. And as Sally said, it's uncomfortable for people to have it a little squishy like that, a little bit open, but they've got to recognize we're changing as a company. You've got to change your culture.
People
I just want to
like
add in there.
uncertainty.
Yeah. Sorry. One thing to add, because Steve doesn't always realize how scientific he is. He's very data driven. But what he just said about the belonging is essential. So now we know with the science. So it goes, basically it's like diversity, inclusion, and then belonging is the highest level. Belonging, if you ask someone what that means, they're not sure. They're like, I don't know, I just feel good. Well, the technical scientific answer is it's when you contribute. You're asked to contribute. So when he was talking about belonging, and then he was talking about people coming in and contributing to the culture, people don't want to just join something that like is something static. They want to feel like whatever I'm going to say is going to be absorbed. And if you already have a successful company, it can be tricky to recruit people because they're like, am I really going to make a difference here? Versus when I'm at a smaller company, my voice might have a louder, disproportionate impact, right? So what he said on the belonging and the contributing is really something to pay attention to, because now we know that in the science that is key. Back to like, it's not about engagement. It's about all these other things that we just keep learning.
Yeah. I had a number of episodes back. It was all around kind of HR. So I had a number of CHROs, and one of the guests was Amy Bastuga, who is the chief people officer at Radio Flyer, and they have a legendary culture. And one of the things she said, I put it up as a quote. It was, once people join Radio Flyer to join the culture, they become the culture. Mm-hmm. It's not us retaining them. It's them retaining each other. And I was like, mic drop, Amy. Like, it's like
Jedi ninja warrior right there. Yeah.
I mean, that's
what it's
awesome.
all about.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
So you have both worked on the talent and culture side, obviously. What are some of the biggest lessons that you learned that you would advise companies to apply as it relates to their talent teams and their culture organizations?
I'll go first. I guess I would say look at the frontier right now as a moment of experimentation. You know, what I love when I see organizations like Chick-fil-A, they're putting alumni on their career pages. That's bold. They're recognizing that we're not a destination for everyone, but we're going to be the best part of someone's journey, right? We're going to come here and we'll help you get wherever it is you want to go. Yeah. And that's, that takes some maturity. Chipotle in the similar space does the same things. Like, we know we're not your dream job. We're good with that, but we're going to make it the best part of your journey. Yeah. And I think that increasingly talent is loyal to learning, not to the company. And because there's so many more choices. There's so many more possibilities that we've learned now, that you can apply your degree, your experiences in different, more, beautiful ways. And as a parent, that's a beautiful thing. As an employer, it's terrifying. Just terrifying. People just have more. So we need to build to expect people are going to go. And that's the big, I think, talent strategy. That doesn't mean that you're not worthy, doesn't mean you don't have a sexy culture or whatever, that you're not nice. It just recognize, when I have organizations say, oh no, Susan left. She was the only person that knew that. I said, well, that's on you. Why didn't you rotate Susan and put someone in Susan's role so that when Susan left, because she will, that you've got someone who can step in until you figure out, what you want to do. And that to me, talent retention right now is playing defense. And I want my best people to stay. Don't get me wrong. I definitely do. And some people will for different reasons, but I've got to prepare with the recognition that people probably won't. Every conference I've spoken to in the last year, I asked this question. I said, here's the turnover data. People are leaving faster. Okay. Do you think it's going to, we can talk about why, but the bigger question is, do you think that will change in the future? Do you think people are going to stay longer? And the answer 99% of the time is no, we do not believe it. So then I say, well, I got some bad news for you. Every benefit, every piece of your work architecture was built to reward those that stay longer. And now you know they won't. So how about we take some of those resources and redeploy them with build alumni networks, for example, build re-engineer work so that people are learning on the job. So we don't have any job that takes more than a few months for someone to learn how to do. If you've got something that takes a year, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. They're going to leave after, 18 months and now you're host, right? Why do you do that?
And by the way, people come back too. Like if you take the attitude that once you're gone, you're dead to us, then they'll definitely be gone forever. But if the attitude is thank you, and we hope that we were able to contribute to your journey as well, let's stay in touch. Like people come back all the time, but they never will if you treat them like once they're gone, they're gone.
That's right.
Right.
So
Right. I would just add to that. So learning is essential. I think of this as a DNA strand of how these things interrelate. I think the biggest lesson is to be a systems thinker, to really just think how something impacts, because we can be all very shiny bauble, like a cat just going after like whatever feels exciting or gets your attention. I think the systems thinking is critical so that you can think through as you're learning, how are you spiraling up? And are you looking around the corner for how these things play out? So, when you do X, what are the 3 steps you think might come next? And how do you design for what you want it to be, understanding that there needs to be a variance, right? I just feel like that is an essential thing that maybe it's the fluidity in the system too. Maybe we'll just add like a couple of the things we talked about, how to like stack these things, because it can feel like we're throwing a lot. So I would say learning in a system for fluidity, like just to like give a few things that people can walk away and go like, okay, I can remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let me also add on to this, and this is something I'm going after with my next book, which is, I think, and this is another LinkedIn experience which took about 10 years for it to sink in, and I'm finally sort of, I should have recognized that at the time. When we were building LinkedIn at hyperspeed, we're putting people in roles that had no qualifications for at scale. Like I'm not saying 0%, but let's say 40 or 50%, whereas normally you hire someone like 90% qualified. We're doing that all over the place. And you know what happened? The energy that was unlocked when people start doing stuff that someone thought they could do and they weren't sure that they could, and you ask any executive, what's that moment where your career pivoted? Was it doing the same thing for 3 years and then you just mastered it and everything was good? Or was it when someone tapped you on the shoulder, go do this, and you're like, no, I don't really, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, go do that. I trust you. I believe in you. And you did it. And the energy that you had more than offset the lack of experience. And that's why I like this fluidity. And that's why I try to build. And I feel like I'm in a universe of trying to make people more calm. Like we're trying to shut. It's okay, folks. That energy is so powerful. And that, if you step back, that's what Silicon Valley is. We got more people building new businesses and companies than anywhere else in the world at scale. And look at what's happening. The most creative, most innovative, the most highest market cap organizations in the world are in the most fluid part of the world. So why are we designing that not to happen? That's just that's a shame on us, right?
And they realize, because these employers, the ones that are doing this, realize that the best answer can come from anyone. It can come from an intern if you just let them open their mouth.
Or someone outside your company.
Or someone outside your company. And the other thing it does is just imagine the loyalty that builds within those people. Because they will always remember that, hey, that boss gave me a chance and they believed in me more than I believed in myself. I mean, what an amazing way to build a brand ambassador out of one decision, So let's talk about the office for a little bit. So you both have very small teams, but yet you work with clients with headcount in the thousands, with facilities in the hundreds of thousands of square feet. So you have a front row seat to this. So Steve, I'm going to ask you first, how important is the office?
It really varies. It really varies. And the trap that I see many of us falling into is a one size fits all approach. It's just faulty and it's not going to work. But I'm dealing with hospitals. Like we got to have people there. We just have to. So we're trying how do we create more? What we're trying to solve for is a vibrant highly talented workforce that is telling us we want more autonomy and independence than we've ever had before. The only organization that I've seen that's massive, that's doing some really interesting stuff in this space is Unilever. They say on their website, we want to offer you the safety and security of a full-time job with the autonomy and independence of a contractor role. That's what we want to create for you. And that's like, whoa, they're just drop micing. And people are just like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that looks like. Let me go check that out. So, I think, it's curious. I mean, you've got a front row seat to it. I think what I'm starting to see is organizations recognize if we want them here, we better deliver a different experience here than they had before. More stuff, I don't know what that environment means to different people, but it's not just an office now. It's something more.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. San Francisco, where Sally and I spend, a fair amount of time, is in a crisis right now. We have restaurants going out of business at a clip we've never seen before, more empty commercial real estate than at any time in history. The city's about ready to go broke. No one's using public transportation. It's really scary. It's one of used to be the jewel. I take my kids up there like, this is disgusting, Dad. Look at all the homeless people. Why would you want to live here? I'm like, it's San Francisco that I knew when in the 80s and when I was living there. So it's tough. It really is tough. And that's sort of the ripple that this pandemic has created. Like city economies are really facing some dire decisions. But I think, the best that I give people is just try it out. It doesn't have to be all the employees trying the same thing, but this team tried this and this team tried that. And let's try to hone in on. And the other mistake that I see people making, and I'll turn it over to Sally, is that most conversations I had during the pandemic went something like this. How are you doing? Oh, Steve, brutal. All my key people are leaving, can't hire people, blah, blah. How's the business? Oh, best couple years we've ever had. We're crushing it. I'm like, so maybe we're using the wrong measurements, right? Maybe that was okay. Maybe you learn. No one said to me, you know what? We learned we are so resilient and we can adjust and we can handle all this craziness and we learned a new way. No, it's all, it's horrible. And then, oh yeah, we're making more than we've ever had. It's an interesting perspective that they bring.
That's it. It's a change in perspective. Sally, what do you think?
Yeah, shockingly, I agree with Steve. It depends on the results, right? So I have biotech clients who are trying to solve cancer in a lab. They need to be in a lab, right? Do they need to be in the lab 5 days a week? Are there some parts of their week that they'll be doing research and they could be online and not commuting? It just depends on the results of the job. Then I've got designers of games. Some of that can be remote, and then some of that's in a studio where they've got green screen and doing all the stuff. So it just depends on the job. And I think the difference that I hope most CEOs have, but I have seen a smattering of how people respond. There's on the bad end of the scale, it's like, well, I was successful doing it this way as a CEO, and so therefore I want everyone to do it like me, which, sounds egocentric and is. And then there are CEOs who say, I want the best results and I trust my people and I can measure what they're doing, right? Yeah. Because there are a lot of jobs where it's very measurable. Like we always knew sales should be out. Like you didn't want your salespeople in the office. You wanted your salespeople out meeting with clients, right? And that was success. And it was very clear to measure what success looked like. It just becomes that question is something we have to apply to a person who's in HR, a person who's in finance, a person who's the janitor. Like every role can be measured. It just requires us to be a little bit more thoughtful for KPIs or however you want to measure it, to know that what success looks like, both individually and as a team. This goes back to, we can't get so narrow. We have to do the yes and.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap, I want to, Sally, ask one more question of you, which is, you've done a lot of work around hybrid and flex work and how companies should implement and what they should think about. I also think that one of the biggest challenges around implementing hybrid and flex isn't actually the logistics. It's changing minds. It's about change management and the approach to helping people understand why they should do it. So talk a little bit about that change management around hybrid and flex and any lessons that you learned, or any lessons that companies can apply that are considering shifting, from one to the other?
Yeah. So it's the yes and of like have a point of view that's informed by science. There is a lot of data that already exists about what works, and then survey your employees, because if your employees are all young parents, that's going to be very different. If your employees are close to retirement age, if your parents are dating in their 20s, it matters who your people are and what they need to what hybrid and flex looks like. So it's like, what does the human need? And as you think about the ethnography, or maybe it's different groups of people, the personas. If you go back to marketing and apply it to HR, right? So what are the personas in your groups? How might they get what they need as a human out of the work? And then how as a business do you measure individual and team outcomes? And that's the dance. And it's a great dance. It's the same dance you do in marketing when you think about your customers and you have their personas and you think about how they buy and you think about how are we going to track whether we know we're successful. So use those same methodologies to your employee experience. And that's the answer for what's hybrid for you.
It's fascinating what can happen if companies can start to apply the approach to their external customers to their employees.
Right.
Because I feel like historically, a lot of companies have thought, well, the emphasis is on our customers.
We are customer centric. Right.
But really, without your people, who's going to serve the customers? Right.
It's a yes and. Tina Fey had it right.
Tina Fey. That's right. Doing it at 30 Rock. Well, guys, this has been awesome. Steve Cadigan, Sally Thornton, thank you both for being on the show and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you. Thanks. It's a joy.
And thanks to everyone else for tuning into The Future of Work. And we'll talk to you next time.